Hey guys and gals, welcome to the video on photosynthesis. I have a couple of goals for this lesson, guys. The first one is I want you to explain the role of ATP in your body. I want you to be able to describe the process of photosynthesis, and I want you to figure out the difference between the light-dependent and the light-independent reactions that are within photosynthesis. So, starting off, what is ATP? ATP is a molecule we call adenosine triphosphate, and adenosine triphosphate is basically this molecule right here. It is going to be an adenosine molecule that has 3 phosphates attached to it. And what happens is that when one of those phosphates is broken off of the molecule, it makes a lot of energy, and that energy is something your body can use. So ATP ends up being the fuel for your cell, and if you don't have ATP, you are going to have a very bad day. And ATP basically runs most of the chemical reactions within the body. So, with that idea now, we now know ATP is the main molecule at play here. So we now need to talk about how ATP is made, and essentially the entire topic of the next 2 chapters is just that. It's how does the body get ATP? Well, the first step in that process is something called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is basically when you take light and you turn it into energy that the body can use. Well, how does it do that? It does that using something we call pigments. Pigments are molecules that can absorb light. They absorb light and they can turn that light into energy that is later going to be used by photosynthesis. Now, chlorophyll is the main pigment you have probably heard of before. It is the pigment that is used to absorb light in plants, and it comes in a couple of different types. Chlorophyll comes in 2 types. There's chlorophyll B and there's chlorophyll A. And as you can see here, the 2 types of chlorophyll can absorb very different colors. So chlorophyll B is better at absorbing the blue color, and chlorophyll A is better at absorbing red. As you can see right here, the green is not being absorbed at all. This is why plants are green, guys, is that the chlorophyll is absorbing all the other colors except for the green. And as a result, the green is the one color you see when you see a plant. And that's it. That's what a pigment is, and that's what pigments do with photosynthesis. They basically absorb the light. They're the part that actually grabs the light and gives it to turn it into energy. Now, where does this all take place? Well, photosynthesis takes place in the chloroplast, which is something you're already aware of because that was the topic of the last chapter, is where certain things happen. And this here is a picture of the chloroplast. You see the green little thing with all these weird little things inside. Well, this is a chloroplast, as I've already said. The chloroplast has a couple of parts. The first part is called the thylakoid. The thylakoid is these little discs right here. Whee! These little discs right here are called thylakoid, and they are basically sacs that are surrounded by a membrane, and that membrane is made out of lipids. And these are where your pigments are at. So if you're looking for pigments, they are going to be located in the thylakoid. And this is basically the fluid part. The next part is called the stroma. This is basically the fluid part of the chloroplast. That's the part outside around here in this area. So all this is called the stroma. And these are your 2 major parts of the chloroplast. And that's what you should be looking at when you are talking about the chloroplast. Now you might see another word at some point in time. It's not one of your key terms, I don't think, but it is a word you will see, and it's called a granulum. A granulum is just a stack of thylakoids, and this right here, a stack of these little thylakoids like this would be a granulum. So, what happens? What's going on? We have light. We now know where things are happening inside the chloroplasts, but what's actually taking place? Well, basically, photosynthesis uses something called a high-energy molecule. These are molecules that have electrons that can be easily moved. So it's what's called an electron carrier. And this is one of your key terms you're going to be seeing right here, and that it is a compound that can take a pair of high energy electrons and move them from one location to the other. And that's all it is. ATP is actually an example of an electron carrier because it carries energy that can be used. Another one you're going to learn a lot about in the next lesson is one called NADPH. And actually, right here, I almost forgot. You got NADP. This is an example of a high energy molecule. It's something that can carry electrons around. And what this molecule does is that it carries electrons from the thylakoids, which are actually pictured right here. These are the thylakoids. And it carries the energy in the form of NADPH. NADP is the molecule right here. Whee! So NADP comes in here, gets turned into NADPH, and then goes through this process, which we'll learn a lot more about in the next lesson, and it creates a cycle. So NADP basically takes electrons that are got from the light, takes them, moves them to this part right here so they can be used later. Now, there are two processes that are involved in photosynthesis. There's the light-dependent and the independent reactions. Now, if you know your English well enough, you know that dependent means that you need something, so this means need. And I'm trying to write with my mouse. It's not working very well. And independent means you don't need it. So the light-dependent reactions are the part that, well, they need light. The light-independent reactions are the part that don't need light. So basically, it's cut into two parts: the light reactions and the non-light reactions, or the light-independent reactions. And these two work together to make the final product, which is going to be sugar in the form of sucrose and glucose. So what I want you guys to do today is this. I've given you a basic overview of what photosynthesis is. What I need you guys to do is I need you guys to go to find a partner for this chapter. And I mean that for this chapter because you're going to be working with this person the entire time. This person has to be somebody at your table. So you must partner up with someone at your table. You want to go online on Edmodo and download something called the Photosynthesis Rubric. This is how I'm going to grade your diagram here. And this diagram is going to be your major grade for this chapter. And I want you to download the rubric for this, and I want you to do the following today. I want you to grab a large piece of paper, or maybe a graphic design program, or some other program you know of that can be used to create a diagram. And I want you today to create a diagram of how the physical aspects of photosynthesis work. So almost what you're doing here is you are going to have to create a diagram of a chloroplast. Now this is really important because if you don't do this, you're going to have to do it again, and I'm going to have to kind of feel bad for you and maybe laugh at you too. Is that when you create your diagram, make sure you have lots of space, because in the next lesson you are going to be adding this to this diagram, and I'm going to be answering questions you may have been confused about. So you definitely don't want to just create the diagram and call it good. You want to keep this diagram with you for the next week. And you don't want to misplace it, because if you come into class on Wednesday and you don't have the diagram, you're going to have to do it again. So save yourself space, because you're going to add to it next lesson. And you want to make sure you're using things like arrows or other types of weird shapes and symbols that can be used to show, I have no idea what this is right here, it's just a weird thing. Have some of those short shapes and symbols that show you how things are related, because in the next activity you're going to have to explain the connections in a little more detail. Now, how the rubric plays into this is you want to read the rubric and you want to see what I am looking for you to do, because you want to make sure that you are doing what I'm asking you to do as part of the rubric. This will be a little bit challenging, but I would like you guys to try to work on this today. If you finish this, I would like you to go ahead and work on the homework, and the homework can be found on Edmodo. And that's it, guys. Good luck, and I will see you all on Wednesday.